I looked over there, I stopped my car, and I said, I got to have this car.
But Schwarzenegger needs to convince Californians to resist the lure of such gas guzzlers, because he plans to achieve the biggest part of his reduction, over 33% of his total target, by slashing car emissions. It won't be easy.
Cars are a problem. There's not many ways you can avoid that. California is very car intensive. We have people who drive from one end of the mall to the other end. It's a real issue. California has got the biggest chunk of its greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles of any state. And private car ownership is continuing to rise.
Over the years, no one has sold more of these cars than Cal Worthington.
I'm trying to find a car that my wife likes.
Cal is a true industry legend because he knows exactly what his customers want.
How about a used SUV? You know, this is the biggest car market in the world right here in California. And of course, the obvious reason is people do have to get around, and that's the only way you can get around.
The recent dramatic spikes in gas have not soured the appetite for the SUV.
We find that the used SUVs are selling better than used cars right now. It's just in our heritage, wanting a big car.
Regulators tend to think of automobiles as an appliance. That's not what they are to most people. To some people, they're the most important possession in their life.
Cars are politically sensitive territory, so here, Schwarzenegger is talking the language of caution.
We have to slowly change, because when I came over to this country 40 years ago, this state was celebrating its freeways. You have your car and you decide where to go because it is a free way. We got to re-educate people and got to slowly move them in the other direction.
But what other direction? There's one that Californians have been hesitant to explore, but the governor is an advocate.
Let's use a little bit more mass transit. Let's use high-speed rail.
But the governor knows this can't be the entire answer to the car problem. Mass transit accounts for less than 1% of his emissions cuts. Instead, his plan is to cut emissions by making people use less gas, effectively raising average fuel efficiency for new vehicles from 25 miles per gallon to 44 by 2020. That has put the focus onto one particular kind of car: the hybrid. Like a conventional car, a hybrid runs on gas. It just does more with it. Its engine not only powers the car, it charges a battery. The battery also charges when the driver hits the brake. Because it recaptures energy that regular cars throw away, a hybrid gets more miles per gallon. This hybrid, the Prius, averages 50 and emits 35% less CO2 than a similar-sized car.
The hybrid part is a no-brainer. A hybrid just makes any engine more efficient. Frankly, almost all the cars of the future, whatever fuel they use, are going to use hybrids technology because it's just more efficient.
There are more hybrids in California than any other state. To many, it is a religion, and this is their temple: the luscious garage of San Francisco.
Why don't you come in now, and I'll take a peek at it.
Carolyn Cocolet is owner and lead technician at Luscious.
Like you're anxious to find out what exactly is going wrong with your car. We wanted to use the hybrid car as the inspiration for the actual business itself. So we were trying to be, high-tech, cutting edge, and environmentally responsible.
The most cutting-edge work here involves converting hybrids to plug-ins.
So this is the first car we converted for money. You can see this is a finished product. It's plugging into the wall, charging up right now.
Like a hybrid, the plug-in has a full-sized gas tank. It also has extra batteries hidden in a storage chamber beneath the trunk that can be charged by plugging into an ordinary outlet. It means you can travel short distances, up to 40 miles, on electricity.
Basically, if you can do most of your trips within those short distances, and you can recharge between trips. You might not have to use any gasoline at all. I mean, indefinitely.
The plug-in part is the genius behind it. It means the first 30, 40 miles of your drive can be on electricity. What's great about that is most Americans only drive 25 miles a day.
GM, Ford, Toyota, and other manufacturers have all announced plans to produce these cars of the future.
This has an 80-mile range.
Ed Begley has an all-electric car that plugs in.
Charge it by just plugging this in here.
And at Google, they have a fleet of 10 plug-ins. They are the centerpiece of a vision of the future that really is revolutionary. A car that runs on the energy of the sun. Google has solar panels on top of one of its parking lots. The cars charge up while employees are at work. Southern California Edison is testing a similar setup. And if the sun's not shining, well, in California, the wind still blows at night.
I think the end game for energy is a convergence of automobiles and electricity, these true magnificent but dinosauric industries that have been apart since the days of Henry Ford and Thomas Edison. And the key technology bringing them together is the electric car, that is the plug-in hybrid electrified vehicle.
It is a compelling vision, a place where people drive plug-in cars powered by the sun and the wind. No emissions, everything clean. But reaching this by 2020, the target set for the governor's 33% cut from car emissions, will be very difficult. Of the 24 million cars driven in California, less than 2% of them are hybrids. By 2020, he would need millions of hybrids on the road, or millions of plug-ins. The problem? Cost. Right now, a hybrid is at least $5,000 more expensive than an equivalently sized conventional car. A plug-in is at least $10,000 more. Federal tax credits do exist, but the extra cost discourages many people.
There have been a lot of studies about what people are willing to pay for higher fuel economy. And the consensus is that if a new car buyer can't make back the increased cost for higher fuel economy in about 3 years, they're not interested.
But will they be interested if new technologies can bring the cost down? There's currently research being done to make the internal combustion engine more efficient and to create lighter and cheaper batteries that can store more energy. Innovations like these ultimately will reduce CO2 emissions and costs.
Let's work together with the think tanks, with the universities, with the scientists and everyone. Let's figure out the new technology, because I always say that technology will save the environment.
But technology alone isn't enough. Historically, it's regulation, like the new auto emission standards California is proposing, that will achieve real reductions.
One more car destroyed.
As long as the lawyers and the lobbyists are part of this, progress isn't going to be made. As soon as both sides of the aisle, the Republicans and the Democrats, say it's going to happen, it's then assigned to the engineers, and then progress is made.
So this is the full extent of the governor's gamble. Of all the AB 32 initiatives, reducing CO2 emissions from cars presents the greatest challenge, and perhaps the greatest opportunity. Achieving efficiencies in homes and buildings seems more attainable, but only with huge upfront costs and subsidies. California is already moving forward and investing heavily in that direction. Renewable power generation is the final challenge. Several companies have applied for permits to build solar thermal plants and wind farms. Still, solving problems like energy storage and a new transmission infrastructure will require a vast investment of scientific capital.
Starting with Dr. Chu.
But here, if the new Secretary of Energy's intentions are any guide to his actions, California can look to the federal government for help.
Take this as a challenge. We need science to find carbon-free sources.